Oh man, it's Twisted Metal. It's a series of games that spawned two of the best titles in its genre at the time, and all of them had fun at the center stage of their gameplay. In my age group, if you had any one of these games, you had friends over at your house playing them with you because they were freaking awesome. I'll level with you guys. Originally I thought this video would be short, but turns out I have a lot to say about it. If anything, you're probably wondering why I'm making a video on an ancient classic that hasn't seen a new title in over a decade in the first place. That's right, IMDb says that a TV show is currently in pre-production for this classic title, and I can only assume that a new Twisted Metal game is also going to be following it. You could definitely pull a TV show off with this game concept. A tournament of power among gods and humans where your strength is limited to your machine on wheels and fighting to gain one wish sounds just as epic to watch unfold in a TV show as it is to play in the games. But in order to understand what this announcement means for the series, I've got to really dig further into what made Twisted Metal so awesome in the first place. To really piece it all together, I went back and played every single Twisted Metal ever released in order and picked each one apart. The only title I wasn't able to play was Twisted Metal 2012, and that's mostly because I don't own a PS3, so I'll mostly be using research that I've done on that specific title for that section of the video. The first Twisted Metal was the game that brought guns and cars out of 2D and into the 3D mayhem that it was. While Destruction Derby was just ramming cars into each other, Twisted Metal brought napalm, missiles, and unique ultimate attacks for each and every character. Each car had its own stats, backstory, and unique ending, which was a trait that would continue in every Twisted Metal going forward. In the first release, you had to really pick your battles wisely. You were given 3 lives, and my god, you had to treat them like they were your actual life, because if you ran into a fight guns blazing, you'd often just come out dead and have to restart the entire game from level 1. Maps were designed for all manner of fights to take place and allowed you to use turbo to bail out of situations to get health and grab more weapons. The story was simple. You choose your character for the Twisted Metal tournament and kill your way through the competition, and if you win, you're granted a wish by the almighty Calypso, the tournament's host. Most of the contestants were powerful beings themselves. Some of them wanted to wish to save the world, some of them wanted to wish to end it, and sometimes what they wanted didn't even make sense. Captain Spears is a man filled with regret. He is competing in Twisted Metal in hopes of recreating the past in which he is currently living. Wait, is this game in the past, or is he from the future? The endings didn't really seem to match what the car info actually said, and the driving was pretty stiff. But the goal to beat the tournament and see how it played out for each driver was enough to complement the gameplay and its characters. And this, at least in my opinion anyway, was the second worst game in the entire series, and it was successful enough to warrant a long line of sequels. Twisted Metal 2 was not fucking around when it got released. It expanded on the best parts of its predecessor. Maps were more than just roads with weapon pickups and had way more unique aspects to them. There's a lava level where you really had to stick to the roads or watch your health disappear. There's a level where you're fighting across building tops and one wrong move can mean instant death. There's a snow level which progressively loses pieces of the map as the fights go on. There are parts of the map that open up if you shoot them, and pieces of the map that can be broken off so that nobody can access them. You can destroy the Statue of Liberty and the Eiffel Tower to access new parts of the map. And believe me when I say this game didn't even need Rob Zombie, because each map had its own music epically crafted to its setting. Los Angeles made you want to kick a Power Ranger in the face. Hong Kong gifted me the smoothest Asian track my young years had ever heard. Antarctica had an action movie blasting in your ear as the map crumbled around you. And Moscow had a Russian metal beat that could rival fucking Tetris. At this point, the maps were just as much of a character to the game as the cars were. Don't even get me started on gameplay improvements. Controls and weapons were tighter. When you got frozen, you could actually tell you were frozen. Ultimates were more impactful and had all sorts of cool animations. New weapons like ricochet bombs and napalm were added. Teleporters brought a whole new dynamic to escaping tough situations. The regen pads that forced you onto a ramp from the first game were now health packs that you could just drive through. More characters were added, and instead of just dueling friends like in Twisted Metal 1, you could bring them into co-op with you to compete in the tournament, so not only did you get this epic experience, but you could invite your friend along for the fun too. Each character had its own unique ending where you got to see their wish granted, so it was always a goal to win the game with every character so you could see the ending for each one. You get to fight Sweet Tooth's dad, Darktooth, and probably most important, this game added Minion as an unlockable secret character. Minion was a literal tank in the game, and the only person that Calypso was afraid of. And for good reason.
You stole my powers, Calypso, 11 years ago, stripping me of my birthright. Now, it is time to pay the price. No, please, Minion.
I'm not gonna hide the fact that this is definitely my favorite of all the titles, but after replaying it so much recently, it really is no wonder why everyone else I've spoken to about Twisted Metal always remembers this game first. And for those of you that got onto the Twisted Metal train after this game, I'm sorry that you had to miss out. If there's any one of these games that I'd love to see get remade with modern day technology, it's this one, and the world definitely needs more co-op games. That'd probably sell me on a PS5, Sony, I'm just saying. Twisted Metal 3 brought more characters, even better driving controls, more weapons, and maps to the table. It brought more bosses to the tournament more frequently, and it struck a pretty good balance, all things considered. The bosses could keep you frozen and drain your health if you let your guard down against them. Its maps felt a little more static and less characterized, and while Rob Zombie is all over the first level and opening cinematic, the rest of the game has lackluster music that feels like a departure from the previous title. While this title couldn't really beat the chaotic nature of Twisted Metal 2, Twisted Metal 3 still holds a special place in my 9-year-old heart and manages to be the second best title in the series in my eyes. Twisted Metal 4 was a darker and edgier little brother to previous titles. Twisted Metal 4's story was about a traveling carnival that a tournament happened in where wishes get granted. And then Sweet Tooth overthrew Calypso and took over the carnival. It was a bit difficult to follow because the cinematic was somewhat vague, but the game made it very clear that the lore has been altered for this new title to have Sweet Tooth as its new tournament host. Cars looked more like miniature versions of themselves for some reason. The art style was much more flat and gray, and if anything, it seemed to replace the previous cast of characters rather than add to them. They even reused the same Rob Zombie song in the first level, but I suppose if you have a Rob Zombie song, why not use it twice? Unfortunately, the rest of the levels is just generic metal. Every level has a boss now though, which I thought was actually a nice addition. Overall, I would probably say this is my 4th favorite title. The last of its PS1 era was Twisted Metal Small Brawl. It's basically just Twisted Metal with RC cars and new maps. Most of the favorites were in it. Not much more to be said on this title though. Wasn't groundbreaking, but wasn't bad either. This was probably my number 3. Twisted Metal Black was the first of its series to hit the PS2 with a new developer helming the title. 989 Studios had handed over the keys to Incognito Entertainment, and for me it felt like this exotic game that I'd never get to play because my family never owned a PS2, and as a result I never got to play any Twisted Metal titles after Small Brawl. As an adult, I got really hyped to play this because it was like this unfinished quest that I never got to complete as a kid, and while I can't comment on the multiplayer for obvious reasons, I was able to play through the story and it was refreshing to see some of the classic characters and better graphics. Something felt very wrong with the gameplay though. Driving was lightning fast and extremely difficult to control for some reason. Everyone was just zipping around and it was genuinely hard to fight one person longer than 2 seconds because they were always gone in an instant. They had brought the clunky healing pads from Twisted Metal 1 back for some reason, where you had to drive onto the platform. And all the maps I played on were more gray and flat than Twisted Metal 4. Like if Twisted Metal 4 was the edgy teenager, this would be the edgy toddler that took the worst notes from it. The tournament was now back in Calypso's hands at least. Only he looked like some creepy dude that sits outside a 7-Eleven asking you for money while you're on your way into the store. I had enough patience to play for about 2 hours and then lost it because of how fast all the cars were. It was tedious to play and it turned fights into a chore. Unfortunately, the graphics were really the only thing I was able to compliment after playing all the PS1 titles for comparison, and in retrospect, I don't feel like I missed out on a whole lot with this title. I'll be honest, I gotta rate this one as my least favorite. Twisted Metal Head-On was a title I had never even heard about. Gameplay-wise, it brought the speed on the driving down about 6 notches, and it felt pretty balanced to play. The weapons were lacking pretty hard compared to the PS1 titles, but the PS1 titles also had some pretty pointless weapons as well. Artistically speaking, the maps had more than just brown and gray and black in them, so it was artistically improving on Twisted Metal Black. It was really nice to see improved graphics on all the classic cars too. Even Twister was there. The maps were still pretty unimaginative, but decent enough to pass, and the story kept its traditional Calypso granting your wish theme, so it was a sequel that stayed as true as it could. Passable game, nothing special though. So Twisted Metal 12 still remains the only game in the series that I've never personally gotten to play. I've done as much research as I possibly could, watched all the cinematics, and tried to piece together the gameplay from YouTube videos. Sporting the PS3 hardware as its workhorse, this game was able to provide some pretty sweet looking pixels. And I've read in a few places that the multiplayer was pretty good, and from the videos it looks fun as hell. In comparison to its older siblings though, it majorly lacked story content. And while I didn't get to play it, the research was more than enough for me to understand why this title failed so hard in the story department. Previous games had like 20 short endings that gave you closure for each and every character's wish, and this one had 3 very long and drawn out ones. Sweet Tooth was just now Michael Myers from Halloween, and he just wants to use his wish to kill one random girl that got away from a murder spree he was on, and 10 minutes of his ending cinematic is just him jerking off to how bad he wants to kill this one girl.
She was the one. She was the only one. She was the only one who ever escaped. And I still think about her. I still crave her screams. She needs to be gutted. When I win, he's going to send me where she's been hiding. I'm going to make her bleed. That I almost caught her. I could sense where she was.
In Twisted Metal 1, this dude just wanted to wish for his dead friend back. In the second game, he just wanted to experience peace for the first time, so he wishes to be a bug. In the third game, he just wants some fucking candy. And you never would have known any of that without playing the first 3 games because Incognito Entertainment decided, nah, fuck that shit, he's just a serial killer now.
I'll find her.
This game didn't perform very well critically because of its dodgy controls and lack of story content, and it's possible that they just didn't understand what made Twisted Metal so special when it was handed to them. Which is weird because David Jaffe, who was 2012's game developer, was also the director for Twisted Metal 2. And believe it or not, he recently posted a video defending the game.
You don't get to paint Twisted Metal 2012 as a bomb. It made money, I made money off bonuses, Scott and the team that were still there made money off bonuses.
And I can appreciate his defense, but there's another part of me that says just because you make money on something doesn't make it good. And since the multiplayer will never be accessible again, that means the only thing this game will be remembered for is its lack of stories in a story-driven game. Their excuses for not making more content didn't help a whole lot either. Essentially, they were saying that people wouldn't want to see all the different endings for different characters when you can just watch them all on YouTube, so they decided to not make any content for it at all. Hey man, should I make content for this game? Nah dude, people will be able to look it up. I guess someone should have told The Last of Us and Uncharted about this strategy. It's not like any of those games were massive hits because of their story content or anything. Because of that, Twisted Metal 12 lacked anything of substance at all behind its multiplayer, and it seems like a game I would probably put down after a few days as a teenager. So where does that bring us today?
Let me get to the damn fucking part.
Since 2012's less than stellar release, Sony decided that people just weren't interested in the franchise enough to keep pushing titles out and pulled the plug on a movie concept that they had planned to make right after the game. Today, Twisted Metal as a game sits on a bench hoping for its copyright owners to finally do something with it. A TV show is being made, but its story may differ too much from what made it so simplistically good in the first place. IMDb says its plot revolves around an item that the protagonist is transporting, and as a fan of Twisted Metal, it doesn't sound like any kind of Twisted Metal plot that I'd personally be interested in. And if I'm being completely honest, I'm kind of awaiting a Butcher Fest. I don't know, I'm sure they have their reasons for turning it into a Transporter spin-off, but I don't have a whole lot of hope because back in 2012, the movie that they were going to make was a vision from Brian Taylor where Twisted Metal was basically Mad Max Fury Road and Nicolas Cage would have played Sweet Tooth. Sorry, I think another YouTuber somehow left that there. Anyway, the director continued saying even Sweet Tooth is kind of like the Fury Road guy. You know, it's the mask and the clown with the crazy car. It kind of feels the same. And this was the statement that really let me know just how one-dimensional that movie would have been. I feel like the dude just looked at the game's box art and that was it.
To become a bug in a tiny little garden out in the country. Oh, it would be a life of relaxation and love, a life of peace.
Yeah, really sounds like the Fury Road guy. I realize there's more vicious versions of Sweet Tooth as well, but if you just want a cardboard cutout that's just a Mike Myers ripoff with no motivations, then you're just using the most on-the-nose version of him, and it'd just be hunting for nostalgia points. It's important to note that there are some key characters that made it to every single Twisted Metal. Roadkill, Shadow, Outlaw, and of course Sweet Tooth were always expected in every game, and the drivers for each of these characters were changed in each iteration. Outlaw in Twisted Metal 2 was driven by Captain Jamie Roberts, but was driven by someone named Agent Stone in Twisted Metal Black. Roadkill was driven by Marcus Kane in Twisted Metal 3, but was driven by someone named John Doe in Twisted Metal Black. After researching all the names in the casting, it seems like they've chosen the crew that's in every Twisted Metal. The thing that really concerns me the most is the plot. After discussing all these games, does this sound like any plot that a Twisted Metal fan would be interested in? I might sound really critical of this TV show and Incognito Entertainment, but it's because everybody's missing out on what made Twisted Metal so epic, and I'm just hoping that they don't ruin this opportunity to revive a once incredible title. A TV show surrounding a tournament to receive a wish is completely possible, and in the same way Sonic fans had their IP respected, Twisted Metal fans deserve just as much. From the look of things, I'm expecting it to end up on the mountain of video game movies and TV shows that tried and failed. This is the current state of Twisted Metal. Leave a comment for what your favorite Twisted Metal was.